here is Ben Shapiro. Remember, this is the guy who said, we don't have to worry about climate change because if people's houses get swamped by water, they can just sell it to somebody else. Play this.
Now, to be fair, there's confusion that arises when it comes to LGBT issues. Why? Well, because that's a question of self-identity. How would you even know if somebody walked into your business and they were gay unless they told you they were gay?
Pause here for 1 second. I want you to just follow along as he says this. Self-identification. Like, for instance, let's say if you were Jewish. I mean, people could say like, oh, I can tell if someone's Jewish or not, in the same way that people say I can tell if they're gay. But let's just go along. I don't think that's always the case. But it really is about self-identification. Mm-hmm. Now, just suspend for a moment the Ben Shapiro's sense that he gets to choose who's a Jew. That's going to come into play here, because he said in many times he has said that Jews are not really Jews because they don't practice the version of Judaism that he practices, which is important. But I want you to just follow along on this guy's reasoning here, okay? So go back to the beginning. Walk into a store. I don't know if this person's Jewish.
Now, to be fair, there's confusion that arises when it comes to LGBT issues. Why? Well, because that's a question of self-identity. How would you even know if somebody walked into your business and they were gay unless they told you they were gay? I mean, that is literally the only way that you would know. Or in fact, they asked you to do a message for gay marriage, or they explained to you that they were married to another person of the same sex. There are a lot of people who have various characteristics who are gay. The gay community is in fact not quite as stereotypical as TV would make it out to be. Which means that very often, quote unquote, discrimination against a gay person is not in fact discrimination against a gay person. It's discrimination against behavior that is conducted by a person who happens to be gay. That is not the same thing at all. And that's the point the court is making. This is, by the way, a major...
But now, let's be clear here. If you are gay, it is definitionally, it means that you are attracted to people of the same sex, that you will fall in love in the same way that a heterosexual would with someone of the same sex. And as it is your right to get married, you will marry someone of the same sex. A straight person does not do those things. Doesn't matter how they identify. If they engage in these, if I'm going to go marry someone of the same sex, I can say that I'm straight, but it is a gay marriage. It is a marriage between two people of the same sex. Mm-hmm. It's not just a practice. It's not like you happen to be gay. Like, that's what is definitionally why you are gay. In the same way that, but again,
but
the
Sam,
idea that you would discriminate, that he would be okay with discrimination against a Jew, not because of who his parent was, but because they're practicing. And incidentally, this is what happened during the Spanish Inquisition. You were allowed to live in Spain if you decided that you were no longer going to practice Judaism, but maybe you would practice Catholicism. It was all about your practice. We're not discriminating against you because you're Jewish. We're discriminating against you because of the actions that you are taking that are so Jewy.
Yeah, conversos, they called them in Spain.
Yes. And so the idea under this rubric, Ben Shapiro would have you believe that the Spanish Inquisition was not anti-Semitic. It just so happened that the people who were practicing Judaism were Jews. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they stopped practicing Judaism, they were fine with the inquisitors, as it were. But continue here. See where he goes.
Person, it's discrimination against behavior that is conducted by a person who happens to be gay. That is not the same thing at all. And that's the point the court is making. This is, by the way, a major distinction that has never been properly drawn in the law, but needs to be drawn in the law. the gay rights movement has claimed they're the new civil rights movement. These are absolutely disparate movements. They're not alike in any way, shape, or form. The black civil rights movement was about the idea that you have an immutable characteristic that is not behaviorally based, your race. It has nothing to do with your behavior. It has nothing to do with your feelings. You are black, whether you feel black or whether you don't feel black. Whether you, quote unquote, act black or whether you don't act black, obviously. In fact, there is no such thing as, quote unquote, acting black other than stereotypes. That is not the same thing when it comes to issues of sexual orientation, which is about interior feeling. It is about behavior in the real world. And that is why putting LGBT as members of a, quote unquote, protected class under anti-discrimination law starts to get into very dicey activity as far as forcing other people to accept a behavior, not an actual objective state of the world that is visible to everyone else. It's not quite the same thing.
This is just absurd, because you could say the exact same thing for religion. The exact same thing. And in fact, Ben Shapiro would, because Ben Shapiro says that I'm not Jewish, me personally, or he said the same thing with Bernie Sanders, because we don't necessarily keep kosher, or don't wear a kippah on my head. Now, of course, there are other Jews who would say that, well, Ben Shapiro is not Jewish because he doesn't have payas. He's not wearing talit. But that doesn't work that way in Judaism. That's a different story. But the point is that by his own very definition, there is no anti-Semitism. There is just people who have a problem with people who are practicing Jews. It's absurd.
But he's also wading into an incredibly homophobic and transphobic trope, which is that there's nothing immutable about your sexuality, that essentially people are choosing to be sinners as opposed to it being something that is inherent within them, their sexuality or gender identity. And with that, he is essentially like just regurgitating age-old religious and like fundamentalist tropes about those kinds of topics, which is that I don't really care if you want to be gay inside your head, but you shove that down. Totally. I don't want it rubbed in my face. I don't want it rubbed in this this wedding website planner's face, essentially, right? And
I don't want to have to see anybody holding hands in the street. And it's also, what you're talking about is also the basis for promoting conversion therapy.
100%. Someone's sexuality is like, you can convert your religion. You can have a difference of opinion about how you grew up. You can make a choice to convert from Judaism to Christianity, Islam to Judaism, whatever. Your sexuality, that's who you are. So, like in terms of discrimination, that's an even deeper level as well, that he of course doesn't apply to it, because you can only have gay actions. You can't be gay. But is Ben Shapiro straight or only his actions straight? I'm curious.
I mean, it's a legitimate question. He would say the law needs to address this. Again, this has been resolved both at the Supreme Court level and now legislatively. Gay people have the right to marry. And I mean, we'll get into this more, the legal questions with Mark Joseph Stern. But the point is that when you operate in commerce in a society, you have entered into the realm of civil society. Mm-hmm. And your personal religious, your theocracy, your religious doctrines, your morality cannot override the civil rights of other people. The idea, I'll just go across the street. This is exactly what they said as to, in what Rand Paul would say back in the day, why the Civil Rights Act doesn't need to exist. Oh, you're going to be racist and you're not going to serve black people in your hotel? Well, that's okay.
That's your right.
I won't go there. I'll just go to the hotel down the street. Well, what if there isn't a hotel down the street? Mm-hmm. What if there, I mean, how many times? Like the idea, like, well, people aren't going to go there because it's racist.
Yeah.
No, this is the same argument that they made. You can go down the street and go to some place where gay people are welcome. It's absurd.
And I just want to add this too. When people talk about trans activism or trans ideology, that is a continuation of the same trope. It is not it's an acknowledgement, or it's an admission in their mind that they don't see trans people as a category of human being, but as an agenda item or as some sort of belief system, which is completely antithetical to like the reality of trans people, gay people, queer people, whatever the case may be. Yeah. This is not an ideology, it's who they are.
They say trans ideology because they're in company that won't accept them saying mind virus.
And they want to frame it as a way to of conversion and shame to a place of that, where it's about your actions as opposed to about who you are as a human being. And yeah, obviously that's Ben's ideology too.